What is going on there, gunfighters? Today, we're going to be talking about the S.K.S. Simonov's semi-automatic rifle. A little bit of history we'll talk about, mostly relevance and what makes it a good all-around rifle for today. Unlike a lot of episodes where I just talk off the cuff because I have been blessed with a fair amount of training and experience in the subject matter, this one not so much. I've actually done quite a bit of research for this episode. And I think, although I've spent who knows how long doing research on the S.K.S, I realize there's more that I don't know now than I didn't know before. But I know more than I knew before. And with that confusing intro, let's get into the S.K.S. Circa 1945, the Soviets came out with this. There were some prototypes before that. There seems to be some debate on whether the S.K.S actually saw any battlefield use in World War II. If at all it did, it was very limited, to the point where it isn't even really substantiated, I don't think. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't, but I don't think it was fielded at any great number in any case. But it was right at the beginning of the Cold War. 1945, the end of the war in Europe, and right at the beginning of the Cold War. Designed by the Soviets. This, as I understand it and understand Soviet doctrine, it was designed to be a mainline infantry weapon. Think about that. It was designed by the Soviets as a mainline infantry weapon. And if you know anything about the Soviet Union, I don't agree with communist politics, but those communists make some fine rifles. This being no exception. The Russian S.K.S, the Soviet-made, I guess Russian wouldn't be the proper term, even though they might have been made in Russia proper. It was the USSR, or soon to be USSR. I don't want to get in the weeds on that. But it's a Soviet design, and again, as a mainline infantry rifle. An intermediate cartridge, I think the first rifle to actually mass use the now kind of very common and world-renowned 7.62x39, which I've done other content on. 7.62x39 is perhaps the best all-around intermediate caliber, period, end of sentence. Well, this is the first mass-produced rifle to use that cartridge. This was meant as a rifle replacement, and the Soviets and their doctrine, I think, quickly realized they wanted to go a different route. They had good success with some more mobile tactics in their PPSH, of which I have some first-hand experience on both ends in the Iraq War with that weapon. It's a pretty cool one. I don't know the subvariants, but it was some Russian submachine gun. But I think the AK-47, which replaced the S.K.S, was kind of made as a mainly replacement for the submachine gun, and they wanted to mainly equip their army, their conscript army, with the AK variant. And I'll be honest, I think that served them very well. Kind of more of a philosophy of quality, or quantity has a quality all its own, or accuracy by volume. So the S.K.S was supplanted as a mainline issued weapon to the Soviets for the AK-47, because they were going for a submachine gun. Well, the Communist Party in Russia, I guess, thought it was a good idea to cooperate with the Communist Party in China. They gave the ability, I don't know how patents and stuff work in the communist countries, but they gave the ability and the go-ahead to produce the S.K.S in China. China produced a lot of S.K.Ss, and there were some other Eastern Bloc countries, many actually, that produced the S.K.S. Now, this is gunfighter life. This is not gun collector life. If you're looking for good content on collecting S.K.Ss, this is not going to be that podcast or that episode, okay? I'm not the guy to sit there and be like, you know, in 1956, they had these cutouts, and then in 1957, they switched to these relief marks in the receiver. That's not me. I don't care. Does it have a chrome line barrel? Does it have a chrome line bore? Does it shoot, 2 or 3 MOA? Is it a good, rock solid, dependable firearm? Cool. This is not gun collector life. It's gunfighter life. With that, I guess I should do a proper intro. Welcome to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about guns and gunfighting the right way, with God Almighty at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world first-hand experience. I am blessed to be your host and serve you today. Military, combat veteran, law enforcement, private contractor, state rifle and pistol champion, professional big game hunter and guide, etc. But first and foremost, I'm a servant of God and a follower of Jesus Christ. But I try and use my training and experience to serve you today. Getting back to the S.K.S. I have a bit of experience with the S.K.S. This is mostly from the shooting, not the collecting. I've mentioned this before, but growing up as a poor boy in the South, it was kind of the de facto poor man's deer hunting rifle. And it has, I got to imagine, killed a lot of deer. It was probably the most common deer hunting rifle where I grew up, rural Virginia. Not because it was the best deer hunting rifle, because they were cheap. There was a time when they were sub $100, and the ammunition was crazy cheap. And when you're hunting for food to feed the family, you can get an affordable rifle that's effective at reasonable ranges that'll put meat in the freezer. So the S.K.S. was very commonly used for that. And I won't deny that we may have used it for some other kinds of hunting, like ducks and things like that, just because the ammunition was so cheap. But it's 2023. Is there any place besides collecting for this esoteric, one might say antiquated, rifle design in 2023? And I'd make the argument that there is. I'd say that yes, there is a place for it. And let me give it to you this way. The S.K.S. was designed as a mainline infantry weapon by the Soviets. They make rugged, reliable firearms. The S.K.S. is a semi-auto, rugged, reliable firearm in an intermediate cartridge. I mean, end of sentence. That will do most of what you want it to do if you are up to the task. It is not as good a battlefield weapon. If you said, I'm going to do private contracting, somebody offered me a contract today, I thought it was a good moral value behind it, and I went, shipped off somewhere overseas to fight the good fight. He said, what do you want on the battlefield? I would take an AK, I might even take an AR, but I certainly don't want an S.K.S. I'm not pretending it's the best battlefield weapon. But if you flip that around, if you said you're traveling across the country and, my wife and I live as neo-nomads, and you said you got to pick either an AK or an S.K.S. as a truck gun, I'm probably going to pick the S.K.S. I'm here in rural Alaska right now. I got skunked salmon fishing today, but I might, if I get done with work, if I get done with this podcast in time, I might hit the hills and try and get some meat. Now, if you ask me what would I rather take in the woods to put meat on the table, and these are not my options, that's not what I brought, but if you said you could take an AK or an AR or an S.K.S., this might anger the AR lovers, but I'm going to take the S.K.S. If it's got good quality hunting ammo in 7.62x39, I think the S.K.S. is a better all-around rifle, and that's why I think it's still relevant today. It's not the best defensive rifle, but it's good. For most situations, 10 rounds of 7.62x39 is not bad. We'll get to modifying it, but you don't even need to Bubba-ize it and throw giant, kind of crazy quasi-workaround, magazines. The internal magazine that it came with is just fine. Learn how to load it with stripper clips. Loading with stripper clips is fast. But, 10 rounds of 7.62x39 is a decent amount. It's a decent amount for a truck gun. It's certainly more than you should need for any kind of hunting. Unlike the AK and the AR, it points and handles more like a traditional rifle, which I like from a hunting standpoint. It has really good usable iron sights. It has a longer barrel, most variants, than the AK-47, which gives you an advantage, a ballistics advantage, round per round. You might have a 30-round magazine, but for most things you don't need that. And round per round, you're getting better ballistics out of the S.K.S. I also think it has really good usable iron sights. And like a lot of other Soviet rifles, it's built like a tank. And I believe it's 50 state legal. And even for our friends in the Great White North up in Canada, I think it's one of the rifles exempt for them. Now, I think they got to put some kind of pin in it so it can only hold 5 rounds. But of all the options available in Canada for a good practical rifle, it's one of the few options they still have. And if you live in a place, either a U.S. state or Canada or somewhere else where, your firearms technology has been thrown back 100 years or thereabouts, because there have been good repeating firearms, good semi-automatic rifles, despite what people might think, well, back 100 years ago. Look at the Remington Model 8. It's a good rifle, semi-automatic. But of those, not detachable box magazine, good cartridge, decent for hunting, medium size game rifles, the S.K.S is not a bad choice. Now, there was a time when they were under $100. There was a time when gas was under $1. It's not much use worrying about what nostalgic pre-COVID prices were post-COVID world with the inflation and stuff that we have. The prices are what they are, but I think even at current prices, unless you just overspend on one, they're a good rifle. And I'm not getting into all the sub-variants. There's a lot that I don't know. And there are German-made SKSs. There are Vietnamese, and there are North Korean variants of the S.K.S. Those are highly collectible. If you find one of those at a good price, my advice to you is sell it and get something much, or buy 3 or 4 S.K.Ss, pick the best shooter, and sell the rest. But I'm talking about shooting S.K.Ss. Again, this is gunfighter life. Of the common S.K.Ss, you've got your Soviet, your Russian, you've got your Chinese, and you've got your Yugos, maybe the Romanian. There are other countries that made them, but of the common ones, most people would think that the Russians are the best quality. But I think that I actually would prefer a Chinese one. And people a lot of times think of Chinese stuff as not being made very well. Make no mistake, Chinese make some cheap gas station quality type stuff for us here in America. But when it comes to making their own weapons for them and their army, they make pretty good stuff. Don't confuse it because Chinese make cheap stuff for us that they make cheap stuff for themselves. Chinese made rifles, I don't think there's ever been an issue with their quality. We're talking rifles they made for themselves. Also, I do believe that there are many Russian SKSs that don't have a chrome-lined bore and barrel. I believe you can get a Chinese rifle with a chrome-lined barrel and bore. For just that reason alone, I think if I were looking for one for a shooter, I would want the chrome. Chrome has a lot of advantages, especially when you're talking about a rifle that was designed to shoot corrosive ammunition. I would certainly want chrome lining. So if I were looking for one of the good Chinese-made ones would probably be what I would be looking for. If I found a good Russian one in really good condition that was a good shooter and it had a chrome barrel, I probably would keep it if I was looking for one. But honestly, I think I'd probably prefer a Chinese one. Talking about a good shooter. The Yugo ones, the only broken SKS that didn't work I've ever seen was a Yugo. I would stay away from the ones made with the funky grenade launcher thing and the crazy sights and the flip-up sights. One of the beauties of the S.K.S is that it's simple. I would stay away from those crazy Yugo ones. I think the Yugos did make a variant that didn't have all that extra stuff. Those might be okay if they have the chrome. But I'd stay away from those. And again, any of the more rare ones are probably going to be collector's pieces, and you're probably better off selling those for a higher amount of money and getting a Russian or a Chinese. And here is my advice on the S.K.S. It's a good rifle. It's a good rifle for what it is. Don't get an S.K.S. and try and make it an AR-15. Especially in today's market and today's prices, if you want an AR-15, just buy an AR-15. Don't get it and try and make it an AK-47. If you want an AK, buy an AK-47. If you want a good all-around rifle, a good truck gun, a good medium game hunting rifle, a good all-around survival rifle with good usable iron sights, you don't want to put optics on it, you just want to take it and run it how it is. A good, again, check your local laws, but I believe 50 state legal, semi-automatic, carbine, built for mainline infantry hard use. That if you take care of it, will likely outlast you and the next generation if they take care of it. If you want a rifle built like a tank, that's a good all-around rifle, the way that it is, leave it alone. Learn how to run them with stripper clips. You want to modify your S.K.S.? Here's the one way I'll tell you to modify your S.K.S. Take some white nail polish and paint the front sight, and then take some obnoxious chartreuse or bright pink or bright orange nail polish and then paint the front sight after you've painted it white to make it stand out. Done. You've modified your S.K.S. Be happy and shoot it the way that it is. That's my advice. Again, there was a time when they were under $100 and people got them and they did all kinds of crazy modifications to them. Right now, they're not that cheap. For what you're going to spend on one and the modifications, just get what you want. Again, don't try and make it an AR. Just get a Palmetto State Armory or something AR. Don't try to make it an AK-47. It wasn't designed to run with detachable magazines. I think you give up more than you gain with that. Learn to run it with stripper clips. Reloading with stripper clips is pretty fast if you know what you're doing. Not to mention you're talking about a good crossover rifle for hunting. If you look at a lot of really high-end, like I'm blessed to have a Pre-64 Winchester, it's a pretty similar internal box magazine. A lot of really good premium hunting rifles have built-in internal box magazines, like the S.K.S. It's a good design for hunting. You don't have to worry about getting it snagged if you've ever been on a long ruck or something in the military and you hit the magazine release and your magazine's just gone. Right? That's not as big a deal if you have a giant resupply of magazines and ammunition and a whole squad of guys. But if it's just you with the rounds that you have, there's some real advantages to have a not detachable pop-out magazine. Again, I'd say the S.K.S. is good for what it was made for. And I would say if that's what you're looking for, then run it like that. My advice, if you're actually looking for a good shooter in this, if you have time and the patience, find one that's a good candidate for a good price. Shoot it. See if it's a good shooter. There's no major problems with it. Because a lot of people that are buying these are collecting them now. But if you get it and you decide you're not happy with how good it shoots, sell it and buy another one and see how good it shoots. And sell it and buy another one and see how good it shoots. When you get a good shooter that's good and reliable, keep it. And that's your shooting S.K.S. Again, I'm not a gun collector. If you want to collect these for money, that's great. And it's probably a really good firearm to do that with. But I'm not that guy to tell you to look for this mark on the receiver and this year of manufacture because it's more rare. In fact, I want to tell you, I don't even care if it's got matching serial numbers. I will take a Chinese S.K.S. with mixed match serial numbers, a different stock, a different backplate cover, dust cover, whatever they call it, different serial number. If it's a better shooter than one with all matching serial numbers, that's not a good shooter. I don't care. I'm going to shoot it. So I'm looking for a shooter. Again, if it's got a different stock number and it shoots really well, I don't care if the stock matches the receiver. What do I care? Anyway, if you're looking from a performance standpoint, that's what I'd be looking for. But the S.K.S. is a good, solid rifle. And I think even in 2023, if that's the kind of all-around intermediate cartridge rifle you're looking for, again, they're not as cheap as they used to be, but I think if you look at the quality and the ruggedness and the practicality that you get with that rifle, it's still worth considering. Even in 2023, even with all the fancy other rifles out there. Anyway, some of my thoughts on the S.K.S. Tactical tip of the day, and this is going to come out of a question from one of the patrons about the steel ammo. Now, these weapons were designed to shoot that kind of ammo. I generally don't advise you shoot that crap steel bimetal ammo out of your AR, out of your 9mm handgun. I don't advise it. Some people do, and that's fine. I don't. But for these weapons, for the AK-47 and for the S.K.S, they were designed for this dirt cheap, kind of lacquered, steel case ammo. If you want to stockpile that ammo for these weapons, I'd say go for it. If you want a good stockpile of ammo, I'd say today it's hard to find the surplus ammo. It's any cheaper than like the Tula or the Wolf that's not actual military surplus. And most of that stuff's going to be not corrosive. The original stuff for this was corrosive ammo. I don't advise you buying stockpile that unless you just get a crazy good deal on it. You like are at a gun show or you know a buddy and he's got like 3 Spam cans full of it. Then yeah, but if you're going to shoot the corrosive ammo, then make sure you clean that weapon. I don't care if you literally run it under the sink, hot soapy water. That's way better than not cleaning it with the corrosive ammo. If it's non-corrosive ammo, doesn't really matter. Clean the S.K.S whenever you feel like it. It'll probably be fine. If you're going to run the old military surplus corrosive ammo, make sure you clean it. For these weapons, the AK, the S.K.S, built with those big beefy extractors to the Soviet standard, there's going to be no issues, I don't think, running that cheap, steel bimetal ammo. So for this application, yeah, I'd say knock yourself out. Again, if it's corrosive, make sure you clean it. And if it's going to be your truck gun, your defensive gun, your hunting gun, don't use that as your hunting defensive ammo. Spend a little bit of extra money and get some good stuff like the Hornady, or the Winchester ammo designed for the intended purpose. It's going to be way better than that bulk FMJ. I think you're better off with a stock, good shooting S.K.S with good quality ammo than some tricked out S.K.S that looks like a tactical magazine threw up on it with just junk bottom of the barrel Tula FMJ ammo. Looking cool is not what's going to win the fight. Being effective is. And the ammo is the part that's going to connect with the target. So if you're going to put some money into the S.K.S, get some good quality premium ammunition. If you have the best shooting S.K.S, you get bottom of the barrel, dirt cheap, 5 MOA accuracy ammo, then you have a 5 MOA gun. That's how that works. So if you're going to spend any extra money on the S.K.S, pair it with some good ammo. Not that you have to train with it and shoot that all the time, but find a good ammo that shoots point of aim, point of impact to your training ammo, like I advise with a concealed carry gun. They make some really good nowadays. There are several companies that make good expanding ammunition for its intended purpose, either defense or hunting, for the 7.62x39. So I'd say really, really look at that if you're serious about running an S.K.S for practical application. All right, with that, your tactical verse of the day. 2 Samuel 22. Pretty easy to remember. 2 Sam 2:2. And he said, "The Lord is my rock and my fortress, my deliverer, the God of my strength in whom I will trust, my shield and the horn of my salvation, my stronghold and my refuge, my Savior. You save me from violence. I will call upon the Lord who is worthy to be praised. So shall I be saved from my enemies. When the waves of death surround me, the floods of ungodliness made me afraid. The sorrows of Sheol surrounded me. The snares of death confronted me. In my distress I called upon the Lord and cried out to my God. He heard my voice from his temple, and my cry entered his ears." remember, gunfighters, it's not the AR, the AK, or the S.K.S, or the scout rifle, or the main battle rifle, or whatever that saves. A rifle is not your savior. God saves. Jesus Christ is your savior. Remember what's really important. With that, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.